You're listening to PumaPodcast.
So, lahat po ba ng galaw ninyo, diretso po ninyong nire-report kay former Chief PNP Bato de la Rosa?
Yes, Your Honor. Hindi lang kay Chief PNP, Your Honor, pati sa Presidente. Direct ako mag-report.
So, yung presidente pong pinag-uusapan po natin, si
President
President
Duterte, Your Honor.
Duterte.
Yes, Your Honor.
At that time, sabi ninyo, major kayo. Normal po ba yon na yung isang major, diretsyong nagre-report po sa kanila?
Again, hindi, Your Honors. Hindi
Okay.
normal.
So, ibig sabihin po, kayo po ay kumukuha ng instruction directly from the President and Chief PNP Bato. Tama po ba?
Yes, Your Honors.
Police Lieutenant Colonel Jovi Espenido once seemed the favorite of President Rodrigo Duterte's, a fervent crusader in the bloody war on drugs. Now he's the star witness of the congressional probe on the extrajudicial killings that defined the campaign.
From my experience, I can say that the PNP is the biggest crime group in this country.
In this episode, veteran journalist Inday Espina Verona talks about what it was like to cover Espenido at the height of the drug war and what we should make of his testimony now. I'm Bella Perez Rubio, Puma Podcast, and you're listening to Teka Teka.
Lieutenant Colonel Jovi Espenido was one of the most controversial cops in the first surge of former President Rodrigo Duterte's blood war. Okay. I know that he got my attention during his stint in Leyte. This was at the time the mayor of Albuera, a small town, Mayor Rolando Espinosa, who had been accused of being a drug lord by the government, by Rodrigo Duterte, was killed in unusual circumstances inside his jail cell.
This happened in 2016. Inday says it was Espenido's relentless and violent campaign against the drug network linked to Espinosa that led the mayor to surrender to police.
And it was a convoluted story because at that time, Espenido wasn't linked to that murder. And soon after that, Espenido tracked a bloody trail throughout his assignments. So he would come up in Ozamis, where the Parojino clan, save for 2 or 3 members, was practically massacred in what Espenido then and his cops called an encounter, but which, of course, other people said was basically a mass killing. The Parojinogs, there was little question that the Parojinogs were involved in drugs, but there were a lot of questions about the conduct of this operation that, of course, killed others, including innocent members of that clan. And then the next time I saw him, I saw he went to Iloilo, he went to other and then he landed in Bacolod City. That's my hometown. He landed in Bacolod City, and that's my home city. What struck me even from the first time was that Espenido was very fond of quoting Bible, entire passages from the Bible. And he saw himself as the hammer of God. And at that time, when he talked, it sounded like Duterte was the earth voice of God, And it was very, very strange. We're a Catholic country, but this went beyond strange, I remember that when he landed in Bacolod City, Espenido was greeted by warnings from the clergy, the bishops of the different dioceses in Negros Island, who said that they were apprehensive because of his bloody track record. And he said something really interesting. He told the bishop to relax, don't worry. Because if God doesn't want a person dead, he's not going to die, no matter how bad he is. So, and in context, he went through it this way, that if you die, it's because God wishes it. I am the hammer of God, and apparently the voice of God in the country was Rodrigo Duterte.
Now, 8 years later, Espenido is ready to talk. Here's a rundown of the most notable things he's told lawmakers so far.
And now he says that when evidence cropped up to link police to the narcotics trade was asked to scrub from his report. He doesn't seem repentant for the killings. In a way, he actually thinks it was a pragmatic way of stopping drug lords. And the other most important thing that Espinido said was that the drug war itself was underwritten by drug lords and gambling lords, by which we mean the police operations. Because he said there was never really that much money for police operations, never mind the huge budget that they got. So he said he personally accepted money from Parohinog for his drug war and of course ended up killing the Parohinog family. The second important thing that he said was that, you get it was either surrender or die. But surrender in this sense, according to Espenido, involved also turning over not just the proceeds, not just the guns, but apparently the drug network. He has really gone up to Duterte. He has mentioned Ronald De La Rosa, now senator, but he is angling now to be a state witness and become immune from prosecution before he actually spills out whatever dirt.
It seems like the actual content of his testimony you find reliable, like, even if not completely provable just yet, at least, worth weighing. Do you think like what he's divulging here we can take at face value?
He said so many hearsay that I don't think will ever stand up in court. But I think where actually dig in is in his expose of police procedures. That to do operations, they would actually find funds from criminal sectors. Okay, that's very, very important for any reform to happen. Number two, when he confirms that police were given a quota for either arrests or killings. And number three, most important is when he says there was a reward system for killings, which again got the money from crime lords. So it says that tells us what is wrong with the Philippine National Police and the government for that matter. Because when we come to it, when you're in bed with criminals in operations that claim to chase after criminals, then we know that no change is ever going to happen except for a change in the leadership of criminal syndicates.
We get into the politics around Espinido's testimony and this entire probe after a quick break. Or what reason has he given for why he's choosing to speak now and, be this candid, throw these people under the bus? Because there have been
Well,
previous
um,
attempts to investigate.
nobody seemed to want to go after corrupt cops or cops in the pay of drug lords. Apparently, he was also subject to intrigue. He was also called a drug lord. He was listed. He was actually, I think he mentioned that Bato and other senior police officials had actually named him as a protector of a Malaysian drug syndicate. He seems very fond of Duterte, and yet at the same time, never stood up for him publicly. And he was, I think the local parlance here is, naburo siya sa kanyang posisyon. For a police officer who apparently felt that he had a great track record of, to the letter, following his superiors, even if it caused a bloodbath, he never got to the senior position that he probably aimed for. The disappointment, I think, is clear. He seems to be telling the truth in saying that he was forced to erase the names of crooked cops from a ledger that he was preparing. But I also there's a fact that he's about to retire soon, very soon. He's from Marcos country, that's Leyte, and that fits in with what I see is really a political merry-go-round. Again, am I happy that the secrets of Duterte's drug war are coming to light? Yes. I think it will really mean seeing the reforms that we all need to see. No, I think it's really just another takeover after a takeover, and that's the way this country rolls.
Espenido, where are you? I will ask you again. You ask for the assignments later. Namatay ang mayor doon. You ask for another assignment sa Osames. Namatay ang mayor doon. Si Paraheno. Ngayon gusto mo sa Iloilo kasi si Mabilog has been identified as a protector. Mayor, mabuhi ka siya? Gusto ko nang tanungin kasi ako naman ang pagbibintangan. Ikaw nga nagbaril dyan, tapos ako ang napapublish kung saan-saan. Pero if you do the country a favor, I will support you. And we all, Tendel will all go to jail. Do not worry.
That's President
Just
Duterte
follow the rules
singling
of
out
engagement.
Espenido as he addressed a crowd
The
of police
requirement-
officers in 2017.
Murder and homicide or whatever unlawful killing is not allowed. But in the performance of your duty, tell your men that whenever their life is in danger and they are in the actual performance of a duty, your duty requires you to overcome the resistance of the person you are arresting, not only just shouting at him to surrender, because if he does not and he resists and it is a violent one, placing in jeopardy the lives of my policemen and of course the military, you are free to kill the idiots. That is my order to you. Always in the performance of a duty. Do you hear me? Your next assignment is Iloilo.
You've already said that it's valuable that this testimony is out there. It's valuable to the effort to hold people who took part in the killings of the drug war accountable. How do you process the larger picture of people who took part in the atrocities, the violence that was committed during the drug war, now changing their tune and condemning the drug war, at least parts of it, and the way it was conducted? As someone who had to cover the gruesomeness of it, how do you process this new reality?
Espenido is not unique. If you look at the people in the House Squad Committee investigating EJK and some of the senators who have been speaking in the Senate probe into Pogos, which also links to the drug war, you'll see some of the people who stood with Rodrigo Duterte, who clapped and cheered for Rodrigo Duterte, who in some ways also went after the people that Rodrigo Duterte targeted, including media. So I think we may see some changes, but will we see real systemic changes? I don't think so. I've seen this before, from Aquino to Estrada to Gloria Macapagal Arroyo to the next Aquino to Rodrigo Duterte. This is another reincarnation of the game of musical chairs.
But do you think this probe in the House, which has seen, Duterte allies be very candid and, to some extent throw him and his administration under the bus, do you think it's changing minds and perspectives, especially of people who supported President Duterte and his drug war?
Yes and no. I think it will be hard for anybody not to be horrified to listen to officials, not to media, to police officials actually say these things. But I think the most vociferous of Duterte believers will always, like other officials now testifying, try to put aside his guilt and will simply focus on the fact that these police officials need to be, punished. But uh, they were the ones who tarnished our Lord's noble program, and we've seen that before, and we'll see that again.
What are your highest hopes, your best case scenario for this probe? And what do you think are the chances that we will also see this level of vigor when it comes to investigation from the executive branch now that we're starting to see it in the House?
Even if just on a symbolic level, even if nothing actually comes out of it, I do want to see an ICC arrest warrant for Duterte and his top enforcement in the drug war. But more than that, I want to see an honest to goodness case filed in the Philippines against Rodrigo Duterte. I know that the courts have told us before that there's always an assumption of regularity for when presidents sit in power, for the actions when they're in power. But I think this goes into the solar system when we're talking about regularity. The things that we've been hearing are really about the actions of a psychopathic government that never ever thought it would be held accountable to justice. I don't know any case filed in courts here will ever prosper to convictions, but I want to see a good try. I mean, that's what we can hope from this.
I hope you enjoyed hearing from veteran reporter Inday Espina Verona as much as I did. Again, I'm Bella Perez Rubio. It may feel at times like the drug war has passed and that it's easier to move on. But the killings haven't stopped and the many perpetrators walk free. We'll link other stories we've done covering the drug war and efforts to bring justice to its victims in our show notes. Please help us demand accountability by sharing them. Pidoy Blanco edited this episode. Our executive producer is Jill Caro, and our editor-in-chief is Carl Javier. Thanks for listening.